Hello Internet, my name is Ian Haig and this is a quick introduction to Ease and Wizz, which is a plugin for Adobe After Effects. Curious? I know I am. So what is Ease and Wizz? Well, as you know, After Effects lets you change properties over time by adding keyframes, and Ease and Wizz changes how things move between those keyframes. So if I play back this animation, our box goes from point A to point B in a linear fashion, which is because position versus time on this graph is just a straight line. However, if we now change the shape of that line using one of Ease and Wizz curves, this one is called Expo in and out, you'll see that it accelerates at the beginning and then decelerates at the end. And when we play back our little square going from A to B and back again, you'll see that it accelerates and decelerates, and it's much more interesting. Now, it's not just the position property that you can apply a curve to, it's pretty much any kind of property that you want. So by way of example, if I change this to a little circle and I'm going to change the property that we're looking at to scale, and the curve is now elastic out, when I press play on that one, you'll see that our scale changes, and as it does so, it uses this elasticy curve to get from one scale to the next. So that's the idea. Let's have a look at how to use it. We are in Adobe After Effects 2020 and I have prepared this complicated animation for you. A box goes from left to right, it rotates and it scales, but it does all of these things in a linear, kind of boring way, and we can fix that up with Ease and Wizz. So I'm going to go to the window menu, and Ease and Wizz has been installed on here, so I will select that. And up pops this little dockable palette with some options. So the easing, this is where we choose just the kind of easing that we want. It's arranged from Expo, which is the most dramatic, down to Sine. And then there's another three, which I'm calling special easing types. And then these ones, which we will cover a little bit later. So how to get Ease and Wizz onto this box. As you can see down here, these numbers are blue, which means that they don't have any expressions applied. If I select just one keyframe from each property that I want to apply Ease and Wizz to, and then just hit the apply button up here on the palette, now the numbers turn red, and when I play back the animation, it's much more exciting. Now these properties each have an expression on them. I'm going to tap the E key twice, and we can see this is the first line of a little bit of JavaScript, and that is what is calculating the acceleration and deceleration that you can see here. I've put together this little animation which shows you all of the easing types side by side. This dot, sad little guy, has no easing at all. Then it gets to Sine all the way through up to Expo. And as you can see from the keyframes down here, they're all taking exactly the same amount of time to get from one side to the other. They're just doing it differently. Coming back to the Ease and Wizz palette up here, under the basic easing types we have bounce, back, and elastic. And if I play this animation for you, you can see this dot happily bouncing from one side to the other. Back just kind of overshoots the mark a little bit before settling into place, and elastic has got this beautiful elasticy motion. Next up is the type menu. Under type you have in and out, or in or out. If I play back this animation, you can see that these dots are very boring, not doing anything fun at all. We can change that. I'm going to change my easing type to Quint, and then for the first one, in, we'll just choose in there, hit apply, and when we play back, you can see that now that is quite different. So this dot is with the in easing type, accelerates. So it starts off very slowly and gets faster and faster, and then comes to an abrupt halt. If I put a out and hit apply, you can see this is on dot 2. Now this dot starts out at top speed and then spends the rest of its time coming to a gradual halt at the other end. And finally, as you probably would have guessed by now, in and out puts the acceleration on both sides of the movement, so that this one starts out slowly, accelerates, and then comes to a graceful halt on the other side. Next up is the keys menu. Options under here are all, start and end, or start only. And these options are for telling Ease and Wizz which keyframes it should pay attention to. So if I play back this little animation, we have a dot which goes up, comes down, and it leaves again. I'm going to put on some manual easing on this keyframe here using After Effects, no Ease and Wizz or expressions here. So I will type in keyframe velocity of 0 with influence of 100 for incoming and outgoing. When I play that back, you'll see that it does actually slow down at the top of its flight at the apex as though it's being affected by gravity before returning to Earth. If I now apply an easing expression to this property, you'll see that my manual easing on this middle keyframe no longer applies. Ease and Wizz is effectively overriding all of the manual values that we've got in here. And that's because we've got keys set to all. If I set that to start and end and hit apply, you'll see that it's working exactly how we want. And that's because Ease and Wizz is easing between these two keyframes here, the start ones, and these two keyframes here, the end ones, and then everything else After Effects is reading the values that you set on the timeline itself. Similarly, start only and hit apply. Now Ease and Wizz is only going to apply between these two keyframes, and for everything else it will use the easing values in your keyframes. Next up, Curvaceous. This is a checkbox. You can have it on or off, and it has two main uses. Now in this composition I have a very simple animation which has a curved motion path. So when I play that back, this little dot goes from one end of the screen and back again along a curved motion path with no easing. It's all linear at the moment. So let's say we wanted to get some acceleration happening on there. We'll just use Expo in and out, and when I hit apply, it goes in a straight line, which is not what we want. That's because Ease and Wizz doesn't know about the curved motion path. It knows where the dot starts and it knows where it finishes, but it doesn't know anything about the motion path in between. However, if we turn on Curvaceous and hit apply, and play it back, we now have acceleration. This uses a little trick where we are changing the acceleration of the time as opposed to the position. The consequences of that are that some easing types are not available to you anymore. So bounce, yes, back and elastic, and these additional ones are grayed out. If you turn off Curvaceous, then they'll come back again. The other time that you might find yourself needing Curvaceous is if you're tweening something like a shape path or a mask path or anything else that is slightly out of the ordinary. So if I play back this animation here, this star turns into a box and back again. If I select a keyframe and try to press apply right now, Ease and Wizz figures out that you've got a path selected and suggests that you turn on the Curvaceous checkbox and try again. So I'm going to take that advice, press Curvaceous, press apply, play back, and now we get the animation that we want. Finally, this then that, which is what I'm calling these special easing types down here. These are ways to get two types of easing onto one property. So, for example, here we're coming back to our little dot. This has some manual keyframing on the center one, and I want it to hit to Expo out here, so it comes to a nice gradual rest, and then we'll use, say, Expo in from here to here so that it accelerates again. Now, I wouldn't be able to do that just with this because that's only one easing type. However, with Expo out, Expo in, and hit apply, when I play that back, there's the deceleration, there's our manual keyframing, and then there's our acceleration at the other end. So, helpful, handy. There's a way to edit this as well, because these are just presets, ones that I've found helpful and that you might find helpful as well. But if you want one that isn't in here, for example, if we had Expo out and then back in, which isn't one of the options in there, then you can just go in here. There's a list of all of the easing types that are available to you. So I can say Expo out, copy that. And it already is Expo out, and then say back in, so we'll get a little bit of overshoot when it leaves, paste that in there, and now when I play it back, we get Expo out, manual keyframing, and then back in. And that's it. Thanks for joining me. If you found that useful or enjoyable or just, helpful, click like, click subscribe maybe. Don't try and click them at the same time though, because I don't think that's humanly possible. Thanks.